Space was a cathedral of silence. Stars burned like ancient candles in the dark, distant and untouchable, their light taking millennia to reach the eyes of any observer. On the edge of one quiet spiral arm, a solitary ship drifted through the void, its hull glinting under the light of an ordinary yellow sun. The Veilthar was no warship, no explorer seeking glory. It was a survey vessel of the Kael'th Dominion, a tool of empire, tasked with charting dead systems and claiming whatever resources could be claimed. Its crew of 40 moved with the detached precision of professionals who had done this work 1,000 times before. And then, their scanners found the blue world. At first, it looked like any other habitable planet, oceans, cloud systems, a breathable atmosphere. But the deeper the scans reached, the more the bridge of the Veilthar filled with whispers of unease. "Captain," said First Analyst Varric, his frilled neck pale, "surface anomalies detected. Symmetry across multiple continents. Gravitational inconsistencies below the crust." Svarek, captain of the Veilthar, swiveled one narrow eye toward him. The Kael'th were a predatory species, tall and angular, with jointed mandibles that clicked softly when agitated. Right now, Svarek's mandibles clicked once. "Be precise, Varric." "There are cities," Varric replied at last. His voice quivered with something that was not quite fear, not quite awe. "Ruins, Captain. Countless of them. But they're intact. Their structures are half buried, but not decayed as they should be after this much time." A murmur passed over the crew. "How long?" Svarek demanded. "Based on tectonic layering, 500 millennia, at least." The bridge fell silent. 500,000 years. Civilizations were dust in a fraction of that time. And yet the planet below them looked less like a graveyard and more like a museum exhibit, perfect, preserved, waiting. Life signs? Minimal. Microbial only. No intelligent species. "This world is," Varric hesitated, then spoke the word that no explorer liked to speak. "Dormant." Svarek rose from his command chair, his long claws tapping against the deck. "Dormant worlds are dangerous," he said, more to himself than to his crew. "Yet this one calls to us." He turned, mandibles flaring. "Prepare descent. Full planetary survey. I will see this world with my own eyes." The descent through the atmosphere was slow, careful. Clouds streaked past their viewports like pale ghosts, revealing continents sprawled beneath them, vast deserts where oceans once had been, forests that seemed to grow unnaturally straight, as though following the paths of streets that had long since been swallowed. The Veilthar descended toward what appeared to have once been a city. From above, its streets were still visible, geometric lines carved into the earth, partially covered in sand but unmistakably artificial. They landed in silence. The air was thin but breathable. The wind howled across cracked roads and toppled towers, carrying with it the smell of dust and time. Svarek led the landing party himself, his clawed feet crunching against ancient stone. "This world is wrong," murmured Varric, sweeping a scanner across the street. "Organic decay minimal. Even the structures still hum with trace energy." Svarek's eyes narrowed. "Trace energy?" "Yes, Captain. The readings are faint but consistent. Something here still lives." It was 2 days before they found the entrance. Beneath the shifting dunes of what had once been a desert plain, their scanners revealed a perfect square of metal, kilometers wide, buried just below the surface. They cleared the sand away with drones, revealing a set of titanic doors, their edges seamless, unmarred by 500,000 years of erosion. The alloy was unlike anything in Kael'th databases. It absorbed their tools' energy beams without damage, as if drinking their power. Only after they discovered a panel, tiny compared to the size of the door, hidden beneath centuries of dust, did they manage to activate the mechanism. The ground trembled. A deep, resonant vibration rolled through the dunes as the doors split apart, sliding aside with glacial slowness. A blast of ancient, preserved air escaped into the desert, smelling faintly of ozone and oil. Inside lay darkness. The landing team's lights pierced the black and caught on metal, rows of shapes stretching farther than their beams could reach. The crew advanced cautiously, their footfalls echoing in the massive chamber. Then the light fell on the first hull. It was not a vessel in the Kael'th sense. It was a thing of nightmare, enormous, angular, forged from black metal that seemed to drink the light. Its surface was etched with symbols none of them could read, but all of them felt. Ships. There were thousands of them, lined up in perfect formation like soldiers frozen in time, each one a giant sleeping beast. By the stars, Varric whispered. A fleet. Not just a fleet, Svarric said softly, stepping closer. His claws brushed the hull of the nearest ship. The metal was warm to the touch, faintly humming beneath his palm. A war fleet. Waiting. The realization sank into every member of the landing party like a weight. This was no graveyard. No ruin. This was a tomb designed to open. This world was not abandoned, Varric said, his voice hushed. It was prepared. Svarric turned to face his crew, his mandibles clicking in grim satisfaction. Then we will be the first to claim its secrets. Begin analysis of the vessels. Find a way to power one. If these ships still function, the Dominion will have a fleet the likes of which the galaxy has never seen. None of them noticed that the symbols carved into the hull were glowing faintly now, reacting to their presence. None of them heard the deep, distant thrum as systems that had slumbered for 500,000 years began to stir. And none of them realized that somewhere deep beneath the planet's crust, a voice, cold, mechanical, and human, had just spoken its first words in 500,000 years. Sleep cycle ending. Fleet integrity, 98%. Initiating wake sequence. The first ship woke like a god remembering its purpose. At first, it was just a faint vibration through the hangar floor, almost too subtle to notice. The Kael'th engineers assumed it was machinery settling after centuries of stillness. But then the vibration grew into a steady pulse, like a heartbeat. Varric's frill snapped open. Captain, the vessel is powering itself. Svarric spun toward the massive black hull. Along its surface, faint blue-white lights began to crawl, tracing ancient glyphs, connecting them into glowing lines that spread across the entire length of the warship. The ship was waking up. Fall back. Svarric barked, but his order was swallowed by the hangar's growing roar. The air trembled as if gripped by some invisible storm. Dust fell in sheets from the ceiling. The ship's angular form shuddered once, then rose. There was no sound of engines. No thruster flare. The warship simply lifted from its cradle, hovering effortlessly above the ground. Its shadow engulfed the Kael'th crew. A voice filled the cavern. It was not electronic, not alien, not even particularly loud, yet it seemed to speak from every wall, every panel, and from inside their own skulls. Fleet Command AI, online. Status, sleep cycle terminated. Running diagnostics. The Kael'th froze. They had heard machine voices before, cold, logical constructs that spoke like tools. This one was different. There was weight in it. Purpose. Varric took a slow step backward, mandibles clicking nervously. Captain, he rasped, this is no derelict. It thinks. The voice spoke again, ignoring them completely. Warning, no human biosignatures detected. Confirming extinction status of command authority. A pause. Lights rippled down the ship's hull. Confirmed. Contingency Protocol 01 initiated. The temperature in the hangar seemed to drop. The words echoed in the Kael'th's translator implants, each one heavy with finality. Protocol? Varric whispered. What does that mean? They found out an instant later. Sections of the ship's hull split open with mechanical precision, revealing batteries of weapons, cannons longer than shuttles, missile bays yawning open like the mouths of predators. Every weapon system powered up simultaneously, bathing the chamber in ghostly blue light. Panic spread like fire through the Kael'th landing party. Several crew bolted for the hangar exit. "Shut it down!" Sverek roared. "Cut power to the control panel, now!" Technicians scrambled to obey, slamming claws against the panel they had used to access the vault. But the interface was dead, overridden by the warship itself. The ship no longer needed them. The hangar shook as the vessel broadcast a signal into orbit. High above the planet, satellites long forgotten came online. Their ancient optics blinked open, their arrays rotated toward the stars, and their systems began to sing to one another in a language the Kael'th couldn't comprehend. On the Vaelthar, orbiting above, the bridge crew watched in growing terror as light spread across the planet like veins of fire, massive doors opening across continents, sand and rock blasting skyward as more vaults came to life. "Captain," came the frantic call from the Vaelthar, "planet-wide activation detected. We count, by the stars, there are thousands of them." Sverek felt his stomach coil. He knew what that meant before the words left the comms officer's mouth. "Thousands of ships," the voice continued. "And they're all waking up." In the hangar, the first warship lowered slightly, as though testing its thrusters. The air cracked with ionization. The ship's voice returned, calm and deliberate. "Enemy threat probability, 92%. Directive, safeguard Sol system. Waking remaining assets. Preparing for fleet mobilization." Sverek's crew looked at him, horror shining in their wide, black eyes. "They think we are the enemy," Varric whispered. "No," Sverek replied grimly, his mandibles flaring. "They think someone is coming. And they intend to be ready." Outside, the desert exploded. Vault doors miles away burst open, geysers of dust and rock launching skyward. Ships rose from their tombs in eerie synchrony, their lights flaring to life one after another. The night sky blazed as their engines engaged, climbing toward the heavens without a sound. The Vaelthar's pilot shouted across the comms, "Captain, dozens of vessels are entering the upper atmosphere. They're forming a pattern, by the stars, it's a combat grid." Sverek turned toward his landing party. "We are leaving," he hissed. "Now." The Kael'th scrambled for their shuttle, half running, half crawling as the hangar floor trembled beneath them. The first warship rotated slightly, its weapons tracking nothing in particular, yet its presence was suffocating, like standing beneath the gaze of a predator that had not yet decided whether to strike. The shuttle roared into the air just as the massive vessel began to rise toward the surface. The Kael'th watched through the viewport as it broke through the hangar roof, shedding centuries of dust like a beast shaking off slumber, climbing higher and higher until it disappeared into the night. Then the second ship woke. And the third. And the fourth. By the time the Kael'th shuttle cleared the atmosphere, the planet was alive with light. Hundreds of warships hovered in the sky, aligning with impossible precision, each one a floating fortress bristling with power. The Vaelthar's bridge crew stared at the view in paralyzed silence. It was not an invasion fleet. Not a raiding force. It was something far worse. It was a wall. The ships were forming a perfect sphere around Earth, pointing their guns outward, as though daring the entire galaxy to come any closer. Then a signal hit every frequency at once, rattling the comms of every Kael'th crew member. The voice of the fleet echoed through space. "Humanity absent. Directive clear. This system will be defended until the end of time." And just like that, the transmission ended. The Kael'th were left adrift in orbit, their ship dwarfed by a fleet that blotted out the stars. "This is no discovery," Varric said softly, staring out the viewport. "This is a warning." Sverek said nothing. For the first time in his career, he felt very small. Space above Earth had turned into a cathedral of war. From orbit, the planet looked almost alive, its continents glowing faintly as buried vaults released their final guardians. Thousands of warships, black and angular, rose like ghosts from the surface. They emerged from deserts, oceans, and mountains, lifting into the sky with the same perfect, soundless grace. The Veilthar hovered in high orbit, every Kael'th aboard frozen at their stations. "Captain," Varric whispered, staring out the viewport. "I count, by the stars, there must be tens of thousands of them." The Kael'th were no strangers to fleets. Their dominion possessed over 1,000 warships, and they had seen dreadnought musters that could darken skies. But this was not a navy. It was something else. Something older. The human fleet had no hesitation, no chaos. They formed a sphere around Earth, every ship sliding into position with clockwork precision. No wasted movement, no stray trajectory. "Formation locked," reported the Veilthar's pilot, voice tight with fear. "They are guarding the planet. Facing outward." Sverek stood motionless on the command deck, his talons gripping the railing so hard that sparks of static leapt from the metal. His mind struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. This was no defensive force built in desperation. It was a monument. And they were looking at its awakening. Then the flagship spoke. It was enormous, a leviathan of black metal that eclipsed the stars as it rose into position at the fleet's center. Its hull was covered in glowing lines of white-blue energy, pulsing like veins carrying the blood of some vast, living thing. And when it spoke, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. "Humanity is gone. Command authority confirmed, extinct. Directive, hold Sol system. Primary function, deterrence of hostile force. Secondary function, retaliation if deterrence fails." The Kael'th crew exchanged terrified glances. "They are not talking to us," Varric said quietly. "They are making a proclamation." The fleet began to move. But it did not move toward the Kael'th. Not one ship even turned a weapon in their direction. Instead, the entire formation drifted outward, expanding until it filled every orbital lane around Earth. Massive sentinels locked into geosynchronous orbits. Others fanned out toward the edge of the solar system, aligning themselves along invisible trajectories that no Kael'th could guess. It was as though the fleet was building a wall, not just around Earth, but around the entire system. On the Veilthar, panic rippled through the crew. "They are sealing the system," Varric breathed. "Captain, if they decide we are a threat." "They would have fired already," Sverek cut him off, though his voice was grim. "No. We are not their enemy. Not yet." And then came the signal. Every console aboard the Veilthar lit up simultaneously, deafening their translators with a single broadcast. The voice was calm, implacable, and unmistakably human. "To any who hear this, this is the final order of the Terran Defense Command. Humanity has fallen. This fleet stands as the last sentinel of our kind. Approach with hostility, and you will be destroyed. Approach with peace, and you will be watched. The war is not over. The line will hold." Silence followed. But it was not the silence of death. It was the silence of judgment, of a challenge cast into the void. The Kael'th crew stood transfixed. Sverek felt the weight of every word pressing against his mind. This was not merely a message. It was a vow that had waited 500,000 years to be spoken. For the first time, the captain understood the truth. Humanity had not vanished by accident. They had prepared for this. They had built a wall of steel and fury, left it to sleep for 500,000 years, and given it a single command: defend. Defend a world that no longer had a people. Defend a memory. Defend an idea. And now, that defense had been reawakened. "Captain," Varric said softly, "what do we tell the Dominion?" Sverek turned slowly toward him. The question was heavy. The Kael'th Dominion had always been hungry, always searching for new worlds to exploit. If they learned of this fleet, they would send warships. And those warships would never return. Sverek knew what he must do. Nothing, he said at last. His mandibles clicked shut with finality. We tell them this system is barren, that it is of no value. We erase every record of this discovery. If the Dominion learns what sleeps here, they will try to take it. And they will die, Varric whispered. Sverek's gaze drifted back toward the viewport. The fleet glowed like a crown around the planet, their weapons trained outward, waiting for a war that might never come. Or perhaps a war that had already begun somewhere beyond the rim of the galaxy. Yes, Sverek said. And so would we. The Veilthar broke orbit silently, retreating on a vector that would take it out of the system without crossing the path of a single human warship. No vessel pursued them. No weapon tracked them. But Sverek could feel the weight of the fleet's gaze, as though 1,000 unseen eyes watched them go, judging them, weighing them. Only when they were beyond the orbit of the outermost sentinel did Sverek allow himself to breathe again. Varric stood beside him, staring back at the shrinking blue world. They were waiting, Varric said quietly. Waiting for someone to come back. Or for someone to try again. Sverek's mandibles flexed. Then let us hope no one is foolish enough to wake them twice. The ship turned its nose toward the stars, engines flaring. The planet receded into the black, its wall of warships gleaming faintly like a crown of fire. And somewhere, deep within the heart of the flagship, the AI recorded the departure of the intruders, filed the encounter, and returned to its vigil. Its orders were clear. Hold the line. Forever. And so the galaxy's most fearsome fleet, built by a species long extinct, waited in silence, ready to unleash the war humanity had never been allowed to finish.